guys, welcome back to Happy Hour with Hope. This month we are talking all about my lenses that I use for wedding days, what I have in my camera bag, and what I use them for. I saved the very best lens for last, the most frequently asked about lens for last, and that is the 50mm. And I have two in front of me, and I'm going to explain why. But the 50mm lens is the most versatile lens that I believe that you can own, because 50mm is as close as you can get to the typical eyesight of a normal human being. And what I mean by that is the 50mm focal length is the same distance away from you as your eyesight sees in everyday life. Which means if I took a picture of the camera in front of me right now, it would look the exact same on a 50mm lens as it would in real life with my eyesight. Whereas a 30mm lens or a 35mm, like we talked about earlier this month, is really zoomed out, and 100mm is super zoomed in. 50mm is pretty much the same as standard eyesight. So I use my 50mm for pretty much every portrait I've ever taken, whether it's a bride and groom, an engagement session, a senior session, or a family session. I'm almost always using my 50mm. I do use my 35 for large groups like families and bridal parties, but if it's a couple or a senior, I am using these 50mm lenses. So the reason that I have two 50mm lenses is because I initially bought the Canon 50mm at 1.2 L series lens. This was my tried and true lens for about 3 years until I started to have some really severe focusing issues. It just started to completely misfocus. My images weren't sharp. They weren't as tack sharp as I needed them to be, and I would have like less than half of my images from a session in focus because this lens was missing focus so frequently. So I love this lens. I've sent it to be calibrated and repaired multiple times, but unfortunately it's just not reliable enough for me to use at a wedding day and for all of my shoots. So based on some recommendations from friends, I purchased the Sigma 50mm 1.4 Art series lens, and I actually absolutely love it. There's a lot of minor differences between these lenses. For example, the Sigma lens shoots a little warmer in white balance than the Canon lens, but it is a lot sharper and it's been a lot more reliable than the 50mm Canon version. And I've only been using the Sigma for about 9 months, and I do still keep both of these in my bag because if one of them fails, I want to have the backup because of how often I use them. But the Sigma has been, so far, fingers crossed, more reliable and more tack sharp than my Canon 50 was. So now I use the Sigma 50mm for pretty much every session. For example, at a senior session, it's all that I bring with me. And I'm shooting with this lens typically between 2.0 and 2.5 aperture because it goes all the way down to 1.4. The Canon lens goes all the way down to 1.2. But again, that theme that we've been talking about in all of this month's videos is that we want a good balance between the image being super tack sharp and in focus and also having that creamy blurry background without sacrificing pieces of the image that we need to have in focus. So instead of shooting all the way at 1.4 or 1.2, I'm typically shooting between 2.0 and 2.5. And I'm focusing on the eye of the person closest to the camera. So if I'm photographing a senior, I'm focusing on whatever eye is closest to the camera. If I'm photographing a couple or a bride and groom, I'm focusing on whoever's eye is closest to the camera. And that helps me to make the entire image look like it's in focus, even if that one portion is the only part that's actually in focus. So I absolutely love these lenses. Highly recommend the Sigma. I'm going to link both of them below. But I wanted to give a little bit of a mini review on the differences between these two lenses because I know you guys have been requesting that since you saw me buy the Sigma. I would recommend purchasing the Sigma, especially for somebody that's starting out because it is a little bit cheaper, a little more affordable, and a lot more forgiving when it comes to focusing. So I hope this video was informative. I hope it was helpful. If you want to learn more from me, there's a brand new free online class at the link in the description. It's an hour long and I'm teaching you 5 mistakes that you're making that are causing you not to book more senior portraits and how to fix them. It's a super awesome class. I would love to see you there, and until then, I will see you next month.